Yuval Harari's Sapiens is a journey through time, exploring the history of humankind and its impact on the world. It specifically explores 3 different revolutions which happened and drastically changed human life: the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. In this video, I'm going to be unpacking 6 things I've learned from this incredible book and hopefully encouraging you to read it too. I'm Ash Porter, welcome to my channel, and let's get into it. But before we jump into my 6 things I've learned, I just need to say this book is way bigger and better than having just learned 6 things from it. Honestly, there is so much you can learn from this book, and everyone's reading experience will be different as well, right? Because, these are 6 things that jumped out to me, and there were more than 6 things I learned, but just my 6 favorite things. But as you read, if you read this book, there are going to be other things which jump out to you that catch your interest based on what you care about and what interests you. And so, please do watch this video, enjoy the 6 things I've learned, but I honestly encourage you so much, go and enjoy this book yourself, because it is truly phenomenal. But now let's get into the 6 things I have learned. Number 1, gossip led to Homo sapiens' success. It's true, it may sound stupid, but this book, Harari, talks about gossip and how it's so fundamental to how Homo sapiens developed and learned to thrive. Yes, we are talking, round the office kettle gossip. Now hear me out here and hear Harari out, because gossip can be annoying, it can be degrading, it can have negative connotations, yet we all do it. And in this book, Harari talks about how since the cognitive revolution almost 70,000 years ago, gossip has led to the rise of the Homo sapiens. Until about 70,000 years ago, when we had this first revolution, the cognitive revolution, Homo sapiens, ancestors, their predecessors, the different kinds of humanity used to communicate in very limited ways. For example, they could warn each other about a lion, but they could only do that. They couldn't say where it was, how big it was, what it was doing, and what danger it was posing. But then, around 70,000 years ago, something happened, the human brain developed, evolution happened, and we had the cognitive revolution, where suddenly Homo sapiens came onto the scene, and they had a way of communicating that was way more advanced than any previous human race. Rather than just saying that there was a lion, suddenly they could say, hey, while I was out hunting near the ravine, I saw this lion chasing a pack of gazelle, and it's about, 15 minutes away. Well, they probably wouldn't have used minutes back then, but you know what I mean. They're giving you specific details, exact locations, and their ability to communicate was enhanced. Suddenly, the Homo sapiens, these hunter-gatherers, went from the middle of the food chain because, physically they weren't that strong, and then intellectually they weren't that different from the animals. Suddenly, because of that rise in intellect and that ability to communicate and coordinate in new ways, they rose to the top of the food chain. Suddenly, these guys could hunt way more efficiently. They could group up together and bring down the biggest mammals and the biggest predators. And even their advancement in communication allowed them to expand their groups, form bigger communities, share news from other areas of the world and other communities. It was like suddenly these networks were forming based on communication. But a lot of this communication, all it was simple gossip. It was people talking about who can I trust, who can't I trust, where's the best place to get good water or good berries. Simple gossip, simple news being shared from one Homo sapien to another. But what this happens is information being shared allows people to form bonds, to form trust, to gain new understanding, and that was what caused the rise of the Homo sapiens. Number 2, humans love killing things. So being 21st century humans, we probably know that us humans, us Homo sapiens, we have a knack for killing things, right? Whether it's other humans, animals, or our planet, we just seem to have a gift for it. And in Sapiens, right, I found that this has always been the case. I sounded quite excited there. I didn't really mean to, because actually this is meant to be a bit more of a morbid one. It's not very nice. But imagine it, right? Once upon a time, thousands and thousands of years ago, Homo sapiens were scattered across the globe a little bit. We started expanding, we started walking or traveling, through the northern regions of the world to get to America, or somehow we got to Australia. I still don't really know how that happened. But the Homo sapiens, they started migrating and moving and gaining new territories, right? And as they discovered these new territories, they discovered incredible lands full of life and full of giant animals. We're talking, legendary saber-toothed cats, or woolly mammoths, or sloths that are like 1 billion feet tall, or giant armadillos like the size of cars. They discovered incredible animals wherever they went. Harari even describes that in the Americas somewhere, there were like rodents the size of bears. Like, imagine that, a rat the size of a bear. That is literally a terrifying thought, but it also is cool to imagine. But apparently, according to our archaeological records and what we understand, within relatively short periods, we're talking 1,000, 2,000 years of inhabiting those lands, we had killed out all these giant animals. Suddenly, these incredible creatures which had roamed the world, and for thousands and thousands of years, probably millennia after millennia, humans came along and we hunted them and we killed them into extinction. And it just kind of made me sad. We're sick at making things go extinct. We're doing it with animals now. We're destroying our planet now, and we've always seemed to have done it. Number 3, agriculture actually made our lives worse. So before about 10,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, us, we were hunter-gatherers, right? We were like a nomadic people who, would be part of small communities, small tribes that would wander around, hunting as they needed to and gathering what they needed to. We lived a nomadic life, we had freedom, we did whatever we want, and we just followed where food was. And then about 10,000 years ago, right, this crazy thing called the agricultural revolution happened. Suddenly, there were some hunter-gatherers who started growing crops occasionally. They'd walk around and maybe once a year they'd come back and then they'd harvest these crops. And then suddenly they got this idea, hey, what if we stay with our crops all year round? What if we stop having to move around all the time and we just focus on farming? And that's exactly what they did. And what's crazy about this is sort of a side fact is this happened probably first in the Near East. That's where we first recognized farming to have happened. But suddenly, in a relatively small space of time, this started happening all over the world, like separate to each other. These communities on different continents suddenly started farming. Like, how mad is that? At first, Homo sapiens probably thought this is going to make our lives way easier. We're just going to stay in one place and we're just going to focus on growing crops. And actually the benefits of this is this allowed the populations to grow. Actually, overall, this probably produced more food, more calories that allowed the Homo sapien population to swell and grow and expand. We started forming, villages, communities that are turned into giant empires. But in this book, Harari makes it clear that actually this made life way worse for both humans and for animals. Your average hunter-gatherer probably worked like a 4 to 8 hour day, which I know sounds like that's pretty normal for us now. But if you know anything about farming, if you're in the UK and you've watched Clarkson's Farm recently, you realise farming is a lot of effort. It's not just 4 to 8 hours a day, it's extensive, it's endless, it's sunrise to sundown. It takes a lot of work. Suddenly, the farmers are actually working harder than they were before. And you also had the problem that when you're a hunter-gatherer, right, you just follow the food. You go wherever it is. You can just move on because you're living a nomadic life, right? Whereas in farming, you'll stay put and you are reliant on your crop. And if something goes wrong that year, you are screwed, right? If there's a bad harvest, a fire breaks out, you have disastrous weather conditions, you are absolutely screwed, and it led to so many problems. It's also interesting that Harari talks about how actually we had way more balanced diets when we were hunter-gatherers. Now as agricultural people, we rely on the same foods again and again and again, and they stopped eating as healthy. Whereas before, being a hunter-gatherer, you had such a varied array of food and diet. Homo sapiens, they wanted to make their lives easier, but in the end they made it harder, and they actually, where they were trying to find freedom, became enslaved to wheat. Number 4, money is a fabrication of our imagination. Money's so weird when you think about it. And let's be real, money runs the world. It's this universal language that everyone understands that allows people to communicate and trade and just have, like globalization in the way we have it now. But what actually is money? To put it simply, from what I understand, money is used as a representation of a good or a service and giving that service or good a value. That means we can compare what an ice cream is worth to a law degree, or a law degree to a car, or anything else, or a car to someone building you a house. Everything needs a value, and money allows us to place that value on things. But in and of itself, money inherently has no value. Like, who decided silver was suddenly something worthwhile? Who decided gold was suddenly something worthwhile? Nowadays, who decides that some number in a server somewhere has value? It's like Harari was saying, it's something like 90% of the money that is in the world doesn't actually exist. It's just numbers on a server somewhere. It's something we fabricated from our imagination, yet it controls the world. It's mad, isn't it? Harari calls it the universal trust system. It's a way that humans have allowing each other to trust each other. But he then goes on to say, actually, are we trusting each other, or are we actually just trusting the money? Money's a madness. Number 5, empires weren't all that bad. So empires, maybe like the British Empire or the Roman Empire, they have a bad reputation. They take some stick. People are not fond of what they did. And often, that reputation is deserved. They did some pretty bad stuff, They swallowed unique cultures and empires till that they no longer existed, and now we have absolutely no trace of them. They oppressed people, they forced ideologies and a lifestyle on people, and often, at the end of the day, the way they expanded and through conquest was through war, through killing people, through brutal murder. And so, yeah, you could say empires were bad. Yeah, Harari makes this argument that you can't blame empires for everything and that they weren't wholly bad. One example of something good an empire might bring is that in an empire, because of its vast network of trading and just being an empire, so having control over vast areas of land and countries and all this kind of stuff, it allows technology and ideas to spread in a way that they never could without an empire. Because of this vast network, these ideas can spread down trade routes, through other people's technology. New inventions can spread at a much faster rate, and actually that's something that's good about empires. At the end of the day, they unite the world in ways which could never be done outside of them. Most empires probably didn't start in a bad place. They didn't start with bad intentions. They were probably just a nation, a group of people, a power that said, hey, we have this awesome way of living that we really believe in. We have these awesome gods, these awesome ideas that we love being part of, and we want to share it with the rest of the world because we genuinely believe this could be helpful to you. That's probably the way these empires started, but obviously things go bad eventually. And I don't think Harari or me are saying that all empires have that good side to it. There are definitely some that started with bad intentions and have always been a bit evil from the start. However, the argument is empires aren't all that bad, that there are good sides to them as well. Number 6, admitting our ignorance allows room for growth. So the final thing I learned from Sapiens, and the one that is probably the most practical, is learning from the scientific revolution about 500 years ago, and how the admittance, or the understanding that we are ignorant, that we don't understand everything, that we don't know everything, allowed humanity to grow and expand and discover new things. For thousands of years, humans thought, or in general humans thought, they had reached the peak of understanding, of knowledge, that the map they knew was as big as the world was, that their healthcare systems were the best they could be, that their technology was as far as we could go, and they were living in ignorance. And then around 500 years, this all changed when, some people started saying, what? I don't reckon we know it all. I don't reckon we know everything about the world. I reckon over these seas there is more out there, and some brave people started saying, I'm gonna go discover what's going on. I'm gonna go and sail in these open seas not knowing what I'm gonna find. I'm gonna try out these new methods of research or science, or trying to find new ways to innovate and do things. And it was the scientific revolution, the revolution of discovery. You know, some amazing things have come 500 years later. Like, imagine our lives without all the technology we have. We just can't fathom it. I love technology. That's how you're watching this video, is through technology. So the scientific revolution has brought around some incredible things. This admitting of ignorance has allowed us to grow. But you also have to look at the other side, because it's not always been good. Humans who, as we have said before, have this incredible ability to kill things, to be destructive, to create massive empires which subjugate and control people. And technology only aids that. But what I want to take away isn't the pros and cons, but it's the thought pattern behind it. It's the approach to life that says, I don't know everything, and that there's always something more I can learn, because that's the approach I want to have. I want to be someone who learns and grows and discovers new things because of that. You know, there's so much wrong with our world. There's so much that needs changing, and admitting our ignorance and trying to discover new things is what is going to make a difference in this world. You know, small scale and big scale. And so there you go. There are the 6 things I learned from Sapiens. This is honestly an incredible book. It's one of those books that I'd say everyone has to read. It is so informative. Everyone can learn a ton of different things, because it's, you know, it is a big boy, 460, 70 odd pages. It takes a while to read. It can be gritty at times, but I honestly say I loved every second of it. If you haven't read this book, go check it out. I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends who you think might be interested. But anyway, I'm Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.